We are answering your questions today. Welcome back to the McCann Dogs podcast. Hey, Swanny.
Shannon, yes?
I have a question for you.
What is it?
What's blue and yellow and shaped like a toolbox?
Is it the McCann question box?
It is the podcast question box. I'm excited.
That was easy. That was easy. Ask me a harder one.
No, that's the only question that I have for you. Thanks for listening, everybody. No. So today we are talking about anything and everything with our questions from our listeners.
Okay. So I see we've gotten quite a few questions. So that's awesome.
Yeah. Some of our show producer has put a whole bunch of questions in the McCann Dogs question box so that we can just have some
random discussions.
Some random discussions about things that will help our audience.
Okay. And we don't know what's in there. So
no.
There could be anything in there.
There could be anything.
Yes.
But at least this time, it's nice and clear and very easy to read.
We got a new printer.
Last time, we needed a new printer cartridge. So we spent a lot of time stumbling over the questions last time because we had a hard time reading them. So now it's beautiful. And this question is easy to read. And we appreciate all of your questions. If you have questions you want to send through to us, you can do so on our McCann Dogs podcast YouTube channel or on our McCann Dogs YouTube channel, where we have hundreds and almost 1,000 videos, I think maybe more than 1,000 now, videos to help you with your four-legged family member. So let's just jump right in. We have so many questions. We'll see how many we can get through before the end of this day. No,
end of the day.
So my puppy really isn't food-oriented right now. So normal reward treat doesn't work all that well with her suggestions. This is a question that we get a lot, actually.
Yes.
I find that a lot of Puppy Essentials students will come in with this question because with our online students, they can start the day they bring their puppy home.
Right.
They can start before they bring their puppy home. We actually have a puppy prep guide that helps students get ready for their puppy.
Right.
And then once their puppy comes home, they have a plan in place and they're already, acclimated to the program and ready to get going in the Puppy Essentials program. So when they join us, often it is, okay, my puppy came home last night and today my pup is not interested in eating at all. I have a dog that's not food motivated. What do I do? So, what do you say to those?
Well, often
questions?
The first few days you bring a baby puppy home, they're often not that, hungry. They've had a huge transition, and you might find that first few days they're not super food motivated.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, puppies are really adaptable, and dogs in general are also really adaptable. The older they are when they come into a new home, generally the more time they need to acclimate. So when they're 8 weeks old, they usually roll with the punches, but there can still be a little bit of an acclimation period.
Right.
Even with Ned, when Ned first came home, it was at least 24 hours before he was willing to eat.
Right.
And he's a very confident dog. He's very food motivated, but even him, in that first day, he flew on the plane beautifully. He was under the seat in front of me in his little Sherpa bag on the plane. He didn't make a peep. He slept through the whole thing. He was fine in the car ride home. But then when we got into the house and I sort of was setting up his area and spending some time with him, he was just like, you could tell that he was out of sorts. He was upset, I would say, for lack of a better word.
Well, he had left beautiful British Columbia, and now he's in Ontario.
Yeah. What the heck?
Yeah. No, Ontario's beautiful.
It is, absolutely.
But we don't have the ocean.
Yeah, it's yours to discover.
It is.
We don't use that anymore, but no. That was a good slogan.
Now we're open for business, or no, what is it?
I can't even remember. It's not as good as
I remember a long time ago, it used to be Keep It Beautiful.
Yeah. To do that. Yeah. Don't litter. So, back to this question. So, with Ned, it took him 24 hours before he was like, okay, I'm cool now. I'm comfortable. And he's a really rock solid dog in terms of temperament. And he had a fabulous start in his life. And then, came home and we hit the ground running and life was great. But there was still that little bit of time. So if your puppy is new and you're experiencing that, give it a little bit of time. Because sometimes it can take a week.
It can take a week,
it depends on, some puppies are really sensitive. And a lot of the times we shoot ourselves in the foot by trying to get them to eat. So a lot of the times, instead of just accepting and waiting until they sort of come out of their shell, people will, oh my gosh, she's not hungry, so I'm going to try to throw some chicken on here. Oh my gosh, she's not eating it and I want him to eat, so I'm going to try to add some gravy. Or now there's all these toppers that are out there on the market because we're creates
a picky dog, holding out for something good. So a healthy puppy will not starve itself. So not to worry. Now, if your puppy's not super motivated by the food, you might look at how much you're feeding them too during their meals.
That's a good point.
A lot of people, will feed their puppies to the roly-poly point, and roly-poly puppies are not always hungry because they're satiated. So you bring them out to train. It's like if I, go out for a great big meal at a restaurant. When I get home, I'm not interested in sitting and eating chips anymore because I'm stuffed and I'm full. I'm always interested in candy.
See, and some dogs are like that, right?
Like, I'm a Labrador for that.
Yeah, yes, exactly. If you have a lab, or maybe you've had a lab in the past, and so you're used to having a walking stomach in your life, and then you go to a little Bichon Frise, and they're not necessarily going to be as food motivated to begin with, and now it's this culture shock for you, right? Like, there's got to be something wrong with this puppy because my last dog, the food bowl wouldn't even hit the ground and it would be empty. And this dog is just walking away from it. So they're all a little bit different. I would say that if it's suddenly different, that is good reason to check with your vet.
Right. Yes.
And that's a good reason to not free feed as well. Because when you free feed, which is just leaving the food down for your dog to come and go, it actually creates pickier dogs. But it also obscures your ability to see and monitor if the dog is eating, how much they're eating, etc. So if our dogs suddenly stop eating, that's usually cause for alarm. And I would check in with my vet right away if that lasted any longer than, I would say, 24 hours max. I would be checking in with my veterinarian at that point. If the dog is older and not food motivated, what do you do in those scenarios?
Well, I'm going to implement toys and fun to help those dogs. And I'm also going to try to build food drive.
Yeah.
So I like to, dogs love to chase things.
Yes,
so
they do.
I like to, to take a kibble and tease my dog with it, hold them back and roll it across the floor and then say, get it.
Yeah.
And the dog's like, oh, that's fun. And then they get it and they eat it. And then, so I start throwing it to chase it. And all of a sudden the dog's like, you know what? I like these kibbles.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I had a Saluki that had no food motivation for a long time. And I had to really, you get creative with ways to reward her.
Yes.
And I finally found upon, she loved beef heart. If I could boil a beef heart, dice it up, and that was what she liked. But I had to kind of do a lot of teasing and fun, and it finally happened. It wasn't easy, but it did finally happen. But in the meantime, she grew up into a well-trained, adjusted dog.
She was like a Mr. Potato Head.
Yes. And I just thought of, other ways that I could reward.
Yeah, absolutely. And that really is the thing. I mean, we're all motivated by something, and our dogs are included in that. So you just have to figure out what they like. There's no hard and fast rules that say you have to use food. Food is easy. Food is quick. Food is typically a universal currency for dogs. Most dogs are happy to work for food. So it makes it easy, but it's not impossible without food by any stretch.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely not. So perfect. Okay. Well, hopefully that one was helpful.
Yes, I'm going to get a question.
Yay. You're getting a short one.
I got a short question.
Yeah. It's so little.
Yes. It's a good one though. Do dogs get bored?
Well, yeah. I get bored.
Yes.
Why wouldn't a dog get bored?
Dogs do get bored. They might not think of it like as the human term of bored, but dogs, they get bored and
they look for activity.
Right. That's what they're doing. They're saying, okay, I've had enough of this. Let's go do something different.
Yeah.
So they do.
And when we talk about self-regulation a lot. Puppies don't self-regulate, so they don't relax to conserve energy so that they have it stored up for later, etc. Our adult dogs do that though. So sometimes we get away with them being bored because they'll just kind of self-regulate and go, okay, I'll wait until later for the activity. Right. Assuming that their needs are being met the overwhelming majority of the time. That's probably what's going to happen too. But a bored dog, a dog that is not having their needs met, who is constantly feeling frustrated with lack of activity, will look for their own activity.
Right. And they make up games that aren't good games.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, sometimes they might be good, but for the most part, they're probably not
Right.
going to align with your idea
Right,
of
yes.
what a good game is.
Right,
Like
yes.
right off the bat, I'm thinking like Ned makes up his own games all the time. He's definitely got his needs well met. You know, he gets mental work, he gets physical work. Like life is a picnic for him.
Right.
But he's a busy boy, and toddlers are very smart. And there's a lot of times where he will his food bowl, for example, he has small stainless steel food bowls that are plastic on the outside.
Right.
And I love watching him play with his food bowl. So a lot of the times when summertime especially, we'll go outside and I'll feed them outside. And then afterwards, I'll let him chase his food bowl around. So basically, he will pick up his food bowl and flip it upside down.
Right.
Like he purposely does that so that then he can chase it around with his nose and push it around with his nose. And as he's doing it, he makes all these, you know, horrendous toller noises.
Right.
I should have taken a video
Oh,
of that.
right. You
for
said
your-
they were
your
silent and
toller
demure.
singing
Yes.
post. Or for your dog singing
post.
post.
Yes.
But yeah, he'll like, as he's chasing the bowl
Right.
around and like trying to pretend that he's picking it up. And then of course, when he gets the right angle and just whacks it with his paw in the right way, it flips and then he picks it up and he brings it over and he's so proud of himself. And he goes, here's my bowl. And I
That
go,
is a
"You're
fun game."
You're so smart, buddy. And I take the bowl.
Right.
He likes me to investigate his, like to observe his things and to look at them and tell him how wonderful they are. That makes him happy. So I'll take the bowl from him and he'll be like, oh buddy, you did such a good job of that. This is the best bowl ever.
Right.
Sometimes I go, hey, Kip, look at this bowl. Isn't this cool? Like make a big deal out of this bowl for a second. And of course, Kip won't look up and he'll be like, that's the best bowl ever.
I can see
So
my
then
reflection.
I'll take the bowl and I'll either hand it back to Ned to do what he wants with it, or I'll actually give it a little toss upside down, or I might like create a puzzle for him. So I'll tuck it just underneath the chair leg.
Right.
And like, now you got to get it from here.
Right,
He plays his little puzzle game trying to get the bowl out from underneath the chair. And, you know, it's just all good fun.
Yes,
so.
yes.
But that's sort of productive.
Right. That's a productive
right?
game, yes. Whereas, bad games might be digging a giant hole in the middle of your yard or pulling
tearing
out.
up your.
I remember one time when I was first married, we planted a beautiful garden and we were newlyweds and we're like, look at our garden.
I can just picture you like skipping around the garden and holding hands.
And it was big. We had like everything, cucumbers, corn, tomatoes.
I don't think this is going to go
It didn't end well. It didn't end well. Yeah, one of the Malinois got bored, and we at that point, I don't do this anymore, but we used to let the dogs out into the yard, and they would spend like the whole morning in the yard without our supervision or watching, and that might work for some dogs and situations.
Such a different life, eh?
Yeah.
Like when we just, open the door in the morning and let the dog out.
Right,
and
and we did that all the time. And then so one morning when I went to let them in at lunch, Saber ran by with a corn stalk in her mouth.
No.
And I'm like, oh. And I went back and our beautiful garden was destroyed.
Oh, dear.
So,
no more skipping hand in hand through the garden.
No vegetables for us. But the dogs had a lot of vegetables, but because they were eating stuff. And so that was not a good game that they invented.
Oh, my goodness. I think young Swanny was very different than Swanny of today. That's so funny.
Yeah. I did a lot of things differently, especially with my dogs. And yes.
Oh my goodness. Well, lessons learned, right? Oh my gosh.
And now I would never think about planting a flower or anything. No, I would. No. I still do. But I would never just leave dogs in the yard unattended for that long.
Yeah.
I don't know why we did that, but that's what we did.
It was different. There was a lot of dogs that lived outside back then. Like, I mean, you're only, 29.
Right.
But this is going back a lot of decades.
I know. Like, it was like it's like I lived a previous life.
Yeah, that must be it.
Right. It was a previous life. Yes.
Previous life.
Yes.
All right. How long does it take to crate train a puppy? My puppy hates it. She'd rather be in the room, and I don't know what to do. I've never crate trained my dogs before. This is our next question.
That's a big question.
Yeah. Crate training can be a challenge for some puppies. My first toller, oh my gosh, Jaden, I loved that dog so much, but initially, when I was trying to crate train him, he really gave me a run for my money. And I was pretty early in my dog training career as well. I hadn't had the same struggle with crate training my Rottweiler. And here was this toller puppy who was just out of his mind.
Why do you think he was rejecting the crate?
I think it was just typical puppy stuff initially. And I think it's potential that I reinforced the wrong things. So again, being really new in my infancy with my dog training career, he was only my second dog.
Right.
This was, I started in 99 and this was 2001. So it was fairly new in.
Right.
And I think I probably gave him positive attention accidentally when he was making noise in the crate initially. And I mean, he was a good dog in terms of being very stably tempered,
right?
But he was definitely a loud dog. He definitely went to vocalization when there was any sort of frustration in his life. So it was something I battled with him with his whole life to try to keep it under control and, make sure that I was working thresholds right and helping him move in and out of stimulation without making noise, et cetera, et cetera. And I actually, I always think back with my dogs and I think, I really wish I could go back and try that again with what I know now versus what I knew then, because, the memories of how big of a struggle it was. It would be really nice to know if that was just because of my knowledge or if really he was an overly difficult dog to crate train. But regardless, the first, I would say, 3 weeks maybe were awful. And then we finally started to make some progress and get some quiet periods and whatnot.
So it's normal for puppies to cry in their crate. People are often alarmed when their puppy, they're doing all the right things and the puppy still cries. Yeah. And that's absolutely 100% normal.
Yeah. Let's dive into that. Why?
When puppies are in the litter, they learn very quickly if they make a noise, someone's going to come and look. Yeah. Usually the mom dog or one of the litter mates will come over and say, "Hey, what you squeaking about?" And the puppy says, "Aha, making noise works. Yeah. I get attention." So of course now we bring them home and they're going to feel it works with us too. They're very innocent. They're saying, you know what?
Sometimes it does work with us because it just tugs at our heartstrings.
Oh, it does. Right? It's a terrible noise, a puppy crying.
Yeah. So like if I can think back to when I said, I probably accidentally or inadvertently gave him positive attention, like that reinforces the behavior. A lot of the times when we say it rewards the behavior, reinforces the behavior, people are thinking about food only. Okay, well, I'm not feeding my puppy when they're crying.
Right.
So why on earth is that rewarding the behavior? No. Rewards are anything the dog finds valuable. So if I am thinking about a puppy who is feeling like they want to bring some attention to them right there,
Right. They're lonely in their crate and they're like, what's happening? Like, what is this contraption I'm in?
And the tactic that they used when they were with mom and litter mates was to vocalize, and it worked, right? So now I'm in this crate. I want somebody to come and pay attention to me or be with me or whatever the case may be. If I make noise and that brings someone, okay, so that tactic still works here too.
Right, yes. And even if you just go over and sit with the puppy and say, "Oh, you're okay. Don't worry. You know what? You'll be fine." The puppy's being reinforced. Yes. You know what? He's pulled the slot machine and he's got a whole bunch of quarters out of it by you returning.
Yeah, absolutely.
So now the next time you walk away, he's going to cry and maybe cry louder because it worked before. I better dig in and try it a bit harder.
Exactly. And that's exactly how the process works. Their little brains are just searching for what is going to work.
Right.
Right. So if that noise, oh my gosh, heaven forbid, if that noise gets you out of the crate, you're going to keep trying that noise over and over and over again, and it's actually going to get worse because you know that it worked at one point. And if it's not working now, well, I better just get louder.
Right,
and
exactly.
more insistent and more frustrated,
Right.
We're actually making things harder for our puppies by thinking that we are being kind, you know. What is right isn't always easy.
Right, yes.
So sometimes
people think it's separation anxiety already. No. They think, I brought my puppy home at 7 weeks and he's crying in the crate. He's getting separation anxiety.
They just haven't learned to be on their own yet.
Right, yes. It's not separation anxiety, but we can create separation anxiety if we go in and keep, hugging the pup when he cries or talking to the pup or reassuring it.
Yeah.
You're really being... you're being more cruel to the puppy.
Yes.
By doing that.
Yeah. And it's so sad because people don't realize
they don't know
that they're making their puppies' lives harder, and they're making their lives harder as well. Yes. Because now I have to come back from this and I have to fill in the holes that help my puppy become confidently independent while they've got this idea that they should scream louder and louder and louder.
Yes.
And this behavior is escalating while I'm trying to balance it out. And it's just, from the onset of bringing home a puppy, I'm using my crate and I'm going to try my best to make it a super comfortable space for my puppy. You know, those first couple of days, I don't typically just leave the crate and walk away from my puppy. I'll move the crate around the house with me. So like if I go into the kitchen to make something, you know, I'll take the little puppy crate with me and I might put it on the counter so that my puppy can see me as I am working around the kitchen. And he's not rehearsing getting upset in the crate, but that is going to be a very short window of time.
Right.
You know, we get a question all the time that is one that I don't know why people think that they should stay with their puppies 24/7 for, you know, the first month or something that they're home. It just creates a disaster when you finally do separate from your puppies. So I might do that for a couple of days. But that's it.
Right.
You know, once I've gotten over that initial period of like the shock and the acclimation period where my puppy's like, my entire life has just changed.
Right.
Like I need some comfort. Now I'm going to start leaving my puppy in the other room. You know, I might cover the crate so that they're not looking for action in the home. I might leave on music. The McCann Dogs music channel has been amazingly successful with our young puppies, helping them to unwind and relax and go to sleep in the crate so that we can get to that point where they're comfortable there.
Right. Yes.
Right.
Yes. I think of it like when my son went to university. So he's, you know, lived with me all of his life in Ontario.
So was this you with the separation anxiety or him or both?
It was both of us. It was both of us. So suddenly now my son is, during COVID, moved out to Nova Scotia. So he's a few provinces away from me. And he's suddenly in a whole new situation. He's living in residence. Everything is different. And he, you know, every day I got a text, you know, and it would break my heart that he was feeling sad and lonely. And I started to stress too. But you know what? In about 2 weeks, he was fine.
Yes.
And that's like our puppies.
Absolutely.
Like they're sending us these sad and lonely messages, but we just have to know that things are going to change. They're going to adjust. We just have to, you know, be tough and, you know, and, you know, of course, you know, my son knew I was there for him and, you know, I tried to support him as much as I can, but
support, but not cripple.
Yes. Like I didn't, you know, I was supportive.
Yes.
Like you're going to get through this, Ty. Like, you know, I'd find inspirational quotes. I thought that would help him. And I think they helped me more, but.
I bet.
Right.
I bet.
Yes.
Oh my
but,
goodness.
you know, now, you know, he's in his 4th year and he loves it. I think he's going to, you know, miss residence when he graduates this year.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Yes.
See, that's confident independence for you. I love it.
Yes.
I love it. That's amazing. So these are very normal transitions for humans and dogs alike.
Right.
And we just need to remember that we need to appeal to the nature of the dog and not use our own heartstrings in this. You know, if we bring the puppy out to snuggle them and say, it's okay, I'm so sad you're crying, that makes us feel better.
Right.
And it makes life harder for the puppy in the long run.
Yes.
So
I should have done that with Ty. Don't worry, Ty.
I'll be right there.
Mama's coming. Yep. Crisscross across the provinces. Yeah. Trudging out there. Mommy's here.
Can you imagine? Hopefully at some point during the long run to get there, you would be like, oh, wait, what am I doing?
Yeah.
This probably isn't good.
Right. Yes.
Rescuing me might help.
Right.
Or rescuing you might help me, but.
Yeah. Same with Ty attends the Canadian Coast Guard College. So the first time he was placed for 4 months on a ship, he had to live on a ship for 4 months. Now that was an even huger adjustment because you're going from land now to living on a ship.
Yeah.
And so that one also, I was ready to swim across the Atlantic Ocean to Mommy's coming.
Yeah. No,
but that
was
was another
so fast you would have been able to run right in there.
And that was another huge transition for Ty. Yes.
Yeah, and they are transitions.
And so it's like for our puppies.
We just need to support them through it.
Right,
yeah,
yes.
absolutely. So doing things like making the crate a really positive place for them, you know, those first couple of days, making sure that they're not having negative experiences by being left alone in, you know, really long periods of time or anything like that, but moving the crate around with
background noise.
Yeah, and then slowly starting to add in that that ability to be solo is so very important. Putting food in there for them for their meals so that they get that positive association with the crate. Well, obviously, we're not just leaving our puppies in the crate.
No,
we're taking them out and meeting their needs, but at that point, their needs are very short windowed. So they have a lot of needs, but they're very short periods of time that we can accomplish those needs because they need to sleep. If you think about a baby, they sleep a huge percentage of their life, and our puppies are no different.
People tend to want to keep their puppies awake, but you wouldn't keep your child awake.
If you keep your puppies awake, you end up in this overstimulated zone where they're nipping and they're flying all over the place.
They're cranky and ornery.
And that's when people come to us and say, help, like this dog won't stop attacking me. This puppy won't stop biting me. And if they're constantly practicing being in that overstimulated, cranky toddler mode, then that's exactly the situation that you're creating because rehearsal creates behavior. So what my puppy practices doing that's the habits they're going to come to later on in life. So if my puppy practices being calm in the crate, that's going to be the habit that they adopt. If my puppy practices being out loose all the time for, sometimes people ask about these schedules and they're saying, after he's been out for an hour and a half, and it's like an hour and a half, like, what are you doing with your puppy for an hour and a half?
Right.
Like, 15 to 20 minutes and of good training and play and things like that. Yeah. And then if you want to spend some time having a little snuggle, that's great. But I would say, with our baby puppies especially, those windows should be short and they should be doing lots of napping so that they have the energy for growth and it doesn't become that overtired, cranky.
Exactly. Yes.
No fun.
Yes.
Yeah. Is it I think it's your turn.
Another question?
Yeah. Lots of positives to build in the crate. And then
there is. Okay. New question. So how do you know where the quick is if your pup has black nails?
Oh, that is a
That's a very good question.
Yeah,
yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Have you heard of the dot? Look for the dot. Have you heard this?
No, I haven't heard that
gets used. So my first dog was a Rottweiler, and that, I will tell you, those nails are thick. Those nails were black and thick.
Black as night.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, they were a lot to cut through. And for my first dog too.
Right.
She was always tolerant of having her nails trimmed in that, she would accept it, but she was nervous of it. So she would do this little jerk with her paw every once in a while. So I was always stressed doing her nails, and we worked hard to overcome that once I got more skills in my training and realized that I could help overcome it. And then she was great, but it was a task to be able to do her nails. So there's a couple of things that I relied on. One was first feeling the underside of the nail.
Right. Yeah.
So when you feel the underside of the nail, you can feel where it starts to hook at the end, right? And there's a little bit of a different texture because there's the quick in there and there's some pulp in there and whatnot. So if you feel along the underside of the nail, you can feel where that the nail starts to change direction and become the hook. And that's generally excess that you can cut off. I like to trim my dog's nails more often than not. So usually once a week I do nails. It's very rare that I skip, but I mean, sometimes it happens. But
do you have Toenail Tuesday?
I don't have Toenail Tuesday. It's usually a weekend thing. One of our instructors, Instructor Nell, has Toenail Tuesday.
Yes.
It's always toenail time on a Tuesday. So I love it. It's great. The other thing, the look for the dot part, I thought was a really brilliant way of saying, okay, this is how you see the quick on a black nailed dog.
So what is the dot?
The dot. So if you look at the end of the nail, it's usually a completely flat surface, right? When it needs to be cut, and maybe a little bit rounded, but there's nothing visual there that's different in the end of the nail. But when you take a little bit off, you can start to see the pulp.
Oh,
in the nail.
Yes. I know what you mean
so
now.
As you shave off little bits of the nail, eventually you will see the quick, and it starts as a dot in the nail.
I will definitely need my reading glasses on to see that.
You will definitely, I don't think I'd be able to do this at this point without. I'm still in denial about going and getting cheater or close-up reading glasses, but I need to, especially for toenails.
Right.
If you heard my eye doctor story, you'll laugh at that one. So look for the dot. When you see that dot starting to appear, that's the point where you're going to stop.
That's good. Yeah.
I thought that was really good advice for black nail dogs.
Right. Yes.
There's also aids that you can get with some black nails. A headlamp will be really helpful because it actually illuminates and you can see slightly through the nail. There are, I think they're like heat-seeking papers.
Yes,
that
I've
you can
seen them.
stick to the nail, so it will actually turn a different color when there's the blood vessel is warmer, obviously, so it heats up the paper. So there are aids that you can get out there.
But
as well.
if you weekly trim a little bit off, trim a little bit off every week, it's not going to be an issue.
Yeah, it's very unlikely you're going to cut into the quick if you're just shaving bits off at a time.
It's when you leave them too long and have to do a chunk.
Yeah, if you have to take a big chunk off, it's much more likely that you'll hit the quick. Okay, our next question. Drum roll. What do you do if your 9-week-old puppy goes full alligator roll?
Oh,
I should say this should be reworded. What do you do when your 9-week-old puppy goes full alligator roll? So that is very much a puppy move.
Yes, it's very much a puppy tactic.
Yeah,
it's like, let's flop on the floor and see if this makes whatever's happening goes away.
Absolutely. I just lift them right back up into the sit. I use my hand in the collar and I just go, nope, you're not going to do that. And I lift them right back up into the sit, and then they go, oh, okay, that doesn't work. Yeah. And they really don't try often again.
Yeah, I mean, see it lots in the retriever breeds.
Yes.
It seems to be like a lab. They suddenly or a golden, they just flop to the ground and they're a dead weight down there.
I think they learn to use their weight right off the bat. Right. And then, I mean, you see all these funny, quote unquote, videos out there on social media of dogs refusing to leave places by using their weight. Yeah. Right. And they learn it right from that puppy stage. Right.
I think in the litter, labs love to rough and tumble, and Goldens, and you see them like really wrestling hard. And I think the puppy on the bottom realizes that, hey, I got a pretty advantageous position here. I can bite and nip the dog from the top, and I'm stable down here.
Yeah, absolutely. And then if they go home and they're treating their owners like litter mates,
right?
And I mean, especially if their owners are going, oh, I'm not sure what to do here, and you know, a lot of the times people will reach in and try to like pick them up by the shoulders, and of course the puppy just
just
goes
flops,
from alligator
and
roll
the puppy's
to like,
laughing and thinking it's hilarious.
It's so funny too to watch because they look like Gumby, like they just sort of all of a sudden they have no bones,
right? Yep.
But yeah, don't try to lift them up by the shoulders or try to manipulate and manhandle. They just learn how to avoid being picked up so
and
much
you're
easier.
Playing into their game.
Yeah,
it's like, this is a fun wrestling match we're doing here.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. They're just looking for the value in life. You know, they're not intentionally saying, ha, you can't get, well, they kind of are, but they're not doing it in a mean or vindictive way. They're doing it because they're playing a game. Yeah, it's fun. And then they learn how to use those tactics to continue to promote the value that they like in their life. Right. So that dog who gets used to not being able to be fixed from that position as a puppy, now as an adult is the one at the park who's laying down and the poor owner's standing there and everyone's going, look at that dog won't leave. And the owner's like, come on. And they're trying to push and shove and the dog's like, nope.
Right. Yeah.
Nope. Yeah. Not gonna.
Yeah. So the moment it happens is the moment, hey, that doesn't work. And I just pick them up by the collar or I use my leash and it's like, you know what? And they might flop down again and I'm just going to do it again. They flop down again. I'm going to do it again. So I'm going to be more persistent than the puppy.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that's it. And then, you know what? I mean, I've never had that issue go on past that puppy stage and maybe doing it one or two times and then they go, oh, that doesn't work. And they move on with their life. You know, it's not something they continue to try. If it's not bringing them value, they leave that tactic behind.
I have a story about that. One time there was a dog in one of our classes. I was one of the instructors and it kept doing that to the owner. So I thought, well, I better go over and give some advice. And as I went over and the puppy was flopping on, I was going to reach down to show the owner how to pull up and the puppy submissively eliminated upside down and it was a male. Oh. So I basically got a big stream of urine on my legs. Yeah, and we're dancing.
Well, at least it was on your legs.
Right.
Sometimes when human babies do that.
Yes, it gets, But I remember leaning down and the puppy's like, this person is actually going to do something. Oh. And all of a sudden the pee just came up and it's like,
oh my goodness.
Right.
So, all right. Well, I think it's time for another question. Yeah. Question number, I forget how many we've answered already. So I don't even know.
Oh, another nail clipper. If your dog hates nail clipping.
Didn't you mean another nail biter?
Another nail biter, yes. If your dog hates nail clipping and is not motivated by treats or food or gentle. Oh, yeah. What if your dog hates nail clipping and is not motivated by treats or food in general? Yeah. What would you do?
I mean, it's the same thing. All of our dogs are going to be motivated by something.
Yeah. And their nails have to be trimmed. Yes, this is not a negotiable. Yeah. You know, it's like, you know what? You have to do it.
Absolutely. So what do they like that you can use in those scenarios? You know, there's probably a food that you can get that is going to be motivating for the dog. So
like most dogs too, if you look for something novel, like licking peanut butter off a wooden spoon or licking cream cheese.
Yeah.
Or like my dogs think human food is the very best.
Yes.
So maybe I'm going to get a Timbit. So that's a donut hole.
Right.
Yes. Or maybe I'm going to make a peanut butter sandwich and I'm going to start to take a few bites of it. And the dog's like, oh, and then now I'm going to swap over and use my peanut butter sandwich as the reward. So a lot of times it's, forego just the regular things and think out of the box for your reward.
Absolutely. And it's just about teaching the dog the skill that goes along with nail trimming. So it's not necessarily that nail trimming itself is scary to begin with. So anything that the dog really likes will start to create that positive association in the nail trim. And if we can use those things, so maybe that's petting, maybe that is butt scratches, maybe that is just getting the release from the table, right? So if I am working with a young dog that's not food motivated, then maybe I'm doing things like doing some handling work. And then by that, I mean, taking hold of the paw and touching the paw. And when my puppy is good, I'm going to say yes, and then I'm going to put them down off the table. So now we get a little freedom off the table.
Yeah.
And then after I've had a little play or something to make it worth his while, I'm going to pick him up, put him back on the table, do another repetition. And his reward for being calm and still is that I say yes. And now we go and we have a little play, and then we go back to the still part. And that's actually if my puppy is really, enjoying the play, which if they're not, I'm going to look for another tactic, that makes it easy for me to get these repetitions in. But if they're enjoying the play, then they start to make those associations. When I hear yes in this scenario, it means I get to have that play again. And it all becomes worth their while at that point. So rewards don't have to be food.
Right.
We end up we're so tunnel vision as humans, where we think that it always has to be this one thing. And that's not true. I mean, in the absence of money as a human, I would work for other things.
Ice cream?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, maybe some propane for my house.
Send propane to Shannon's house.
To Shannon. I'm living on propane for the first time, and boy, oh boy, did I get a little reality check with that new bill coming in. I mean, there's things that we would work for in place of money.
I love kayaking. That's a huge reward. It's I'm going to get this lawn cut and then I'm going to go kayaking.
Yeah. There you go. There's all sorts of reinforcement value in life. It's not just food. Food is a common currency that we use with dogs. It's easy. It's readily available. And for the most part, most dogs will work for food. But when they won't, that's okay.
Right.
You just have to think outside the box.
Yes.
And it might mean you have to work a little bit harder. And that's okay. And if you're not sure, then it's time to find a trainer to help.
Right. And also backtracking a bit too, I mentioned before, if your dog's overweight, they're not going to be hungry. And there's so many overweight dogs out there. Yeah. So, be honest with yourself and check your dog's body condition.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that's so important. I actually have a blog post that I've written on our mccandogs.com page called Why is my dog fat? Or is my dog fat and how did that happen? Or something like that. And it goes through some of the common reasons that dogs end up being overfed. And I think it's a fairly valuable article. So you can search for fat on the McCann Dogs website and that article will come up. All right, my next question here. How can I get the attention of a hyper 2-year-old hunting dog whose attention span is in the negative range? So this is the story of a lot of people's lives.
Right.
A lot of people have dogs that are really, really easily distracted. And actually that just brought me back to another blog post I've written called, Is Your Dog Just Easily Distracted? Great, here's why. So that blog post is all about gatewaying rewards. So when Ned was a youngster, I really struggled with his focus anytime there was water around. Okay. And I'm talking 12 to 16 week range. Anytime there was a puddle, anytime there was a pond, a lake, a stream, and I do field training with my dogs. So there's a lot of opportunity for them to be around water. So I needed to get this under control. So with Ned, food was not important when water was around. He could have cared less. I could have had steak and it would, nope. I want water. Nope, I want to go swim. Nope, I want to go play in that stuff. It's the funnest stuff ever. And he's still like that to this day. He loves water, but I will tell you, he listens better around water than just about anything else because of the way I taught him that, you know what, in order to get to that thing, you need to do what I want first. Right. So basically I started with really, really simple stuff. I started beside the water, and I started with just, you know, having him sit for a second. And basically when he sat for a second calmly, I would say, yes, okay, and go swim. And then I'd run with him to the water, and we'd have a little play in the water, and then I would move him back out of the water again, and I would repeat that. So he started to learn, in order to get there, I need to do this, right? And then I added in things like response to name. So now we're moving around the water. I say, Ned. He gives me a brilliant response to name. I say, yes, go swim, and we run to the water, and we play with the water. So that's one way that I combated. With my hunting dogs, I combated that draw of the natural environment and the things that they want. And eventually he got to the point where like he would drill holes in me with his eyes, trying to get me to say, yes, go swim when there was any water around. And that became automatic for him. You know, we would get out of the vehicle in whatever area we were doing field training in. We would get out of the vehicle in that new spot. And right away, if he saw water, he'd be staring at me. Can I go? Can I go? Can I do it? Can I do it? It just got conditioned for him to look to me for permission. Now, at the same time, I was also training skills with
that's
him.
What, because often the dog ignores us because we've allowed it to ignore us. So right from puppyhood, you know, we've called their name and they've run the other way, and we went, oh, well. And the dog says, I can ignore you. So now as a 2-year-old, the dog says, you know what? I've never had to listen to you before. Why would I listen to you now?
Yeah, absolutely. And going into an environment that's really stimulating with a dog that has learned that they can ignore you. We need to hold our dogs accountable for their behavior every single day if we want our dogs to listen to us every single day. Right. If we want our dogs to listen to the recall out on the street when they happen to, you know, one of the kids left the door open and they're running towards a cat that's running across the street and we need them to come. If we expect them to listen there, we need to make sure that when we called their name from across the room, even though, you know, there was no immediate danger there, we held them accountable for that if they did not turn. And that's important. And that doesn't mean being like a tyrant and always being militant with them, but it means being honest with yourself. Right. You know, if I let my dog ignore this cue in this situation that is completely benign, yes, it doesn't immediately put him in danger. But in a roundabout way, it does put him in extreme danger. Because if my dog thinks, like you just said, if my dog thinks, it's okay for me to ignore you over here, they don't understand the difference between the situation being more dire because there's traffic and cars and they're chasing this cat. They don't understand any of that. They just understand that they don't have to listen.
Right. Yeah. Our voice means nothing.
That's it. Absolutely. We have not said, no, you must turn on your name. Hey, you didn't respond there. You know, we've not done that. Walk up to them, repeat their name, give them a little poke in the butt and say, hey, I was talking to you, and, you know, making sure that you follow through. Yes. Like that's not even a mean scenario. That's not even me being militant. It's just, you know, you're across the room and I say Swanny and you don't turn, and I need your attention because I want to make sure that I tell you this really important piece of information that is going to keep you safe. I'm going to walk up and I'm going to say Swanny, and I'm going to give you a little touch. Like I'm going to poke you on the shoulder to say, hey, you know what? I called you. Like, why are you ignoring me? This isn't cool. And then when you turn around to look at me, I'm going to go, Swanny, guess what? I got candy for you because you turned and responded to me. So I'm going to make it worth your while, but I'm also going to insist. Right. You know, sort of like with our kids, right? We can't just say, it's okay. You know what? I don't mind if you don't listen in this scenario, because we know that carries over to other scenarios, right? Right. We know that if they think it's okay here, they think it's okay there. Right. Or, you know, if the skill is not powerful enough to change the behavior here, how on earth is it going to be powerful enough to change the behavior over there?
Well, I remember in the park, I saw a little child running away from the mother, and the child was running towards the bleachers, and the mother's calling her name and get back here. And the child just continued to ignore her. And then when the child got to the bleachers and the mother caught her, the mother just took her hand and continued to let the little girl walk on the bleachers. And I thought, that child's just learned to ignore the name because nothing happens, and the mom will join in with what she wanted to do. And I thought, you know, one day that little girl's going to be running towards maybe a loose dog or, you know, running towards a street. And she's going to say, I've been reinforced actually for for ignoring my mom. So I remember thinking, oh, that's a dog training moment, but I see it happening with a child.
Yeah, absolutely. It is so important. We are setting habits. So if we're setting habits that we won't be happy with later on down the road, we need to change what we're doing to make sure that we do set those habits. So yeah, I mean, training is all about teaching listening skills. So there's no... sometimes there's dogs that really are so cooperative about life that we get disillusioned. 99.95% of dogs out there need training.
Right. Yeah.
You know, they need training to follow rules and understand what we're asking of them. And if we don't give them that training, we're going to have distracted dogs who don't listen.
Right.
Who don't know how to listen. It's not intentional on their part. They've never been taught. You know, these are not skills that they're born with.
Right.
We need to take the time to teach them. That's fair.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And sometimes you're comfortable too. You're sitting watching TV and now suddenly your dog has disappeared and it's like, but a good dog trainer, you're going to get up. You know, you're not just going to start calling like spot, spot, spot and hope they come back. You know, I get to pause the TV and I'm going to get up and I'm going to go and see what the dog is doing, or I'm going to put a baby gate up or put him on a long line to keep him in the TV room with me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Good management until they understand the rules of the house for sure. All righty. I think it's your turn. That's a long one.
This is a very long question.
The longest one.
Yes. What are your thoughts about training an adult dog who weighs over 150 pounds that you cannot simply physically reposition?
Okay, say that again. So it's a big dog, 150 pounds.
150 pound adult dog, and we cannot simply reposition it.
Okay. So, I mean, this is a very specific scenario, and
That's a big dog.
I have more follow-up questions before I can really answer that one. So, I mean, if this is a dog who you can't reposition because they are not willing to be handled, if they're using their teeth, there's so many reasons there that I would say you need to consult a trainer. You need to work with somebody to help with this.
Right.
Do you have anything top of mind that comes... comes on this
one? My first thing was, why can't you reposition it? Is it... Yeah.
What's going on?
Right. What's going on? Yes. But
because truly, I mean, technique works on Chihuahuas and technique works on 200-pound English Mastiffs.
Right.
Like there's definitely more heft behind it. But if the dog understands and is not fighting you, then there shouldn't need to be a whole lot of force applied to get this position. So for example, if we're doing a sit placement, if the dog truly understands how to yield to a little bit of leash pressure because we taught them those skills, then it's not about using more force on the leash to get them into the sit. It's just about the motions of placing them.
Yes. So I think you definitely would want to get the dog enrolled in an obedience class and with an instructor who is going to teach, you know, when we put a bit of pressure on you, it means to move in a good way. We do that in our classes because all dogs have to be examined at the vets.
Yeah, you got it.
So they do need to be able to, yield to pressure when we put that bit of pressure on them. So it's a learning. It's not going to happen overnight. It would be a learning experience.
Yes, most definitely. Well, and in order to hold my dog accountable, I need him to be part of that process. And I need to have skills that allow me to do that.
Right.
And of course, I don't want to be super rough with my dog in doing that, but I need to insist.
Right, yes.
So when it comes to things like the sit placement, when it comes to things like the down placement, for example, these are such important tools to have to be able to hold our dogs accountable and say, you know what, sorry, buddy, I told you to lie down.
Right.
You need to lie down.
You need to do it,
Or
yes.
I told you to remain in that lie down because, that's what's keeping you safe in this moment, or that's what I'm asking you to do.
Yes.
So if you get up, I need a way of saying, nope, you have to get back into that down. And I need a way of saying it without it becoming a big battle.
Right, yes,
or
definitely.
without my dog panicking. So we've conditioned all these placements and whatnot beforehand. So I would say that's the best answer.
Right, yes.
It's time to work with a
And if you look
trainer.
at other types of animal training, if someone's training a camel or or a dolphin, you aren't able to reposition those animals too. So there's, if everyone has different methods and different ways to work. So, we can work, or a horse. You can't physically reposition a horse, but we have managed to train these large animals to be, very good at things that they do.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
I mean, you can move a horse with just the slightest little pressure of your foot, right? But that's not because they're physically being manipulated to do that. It's because they've learned to interpret any sort of pressure we put on them, they've learned to interpret that and be able to get there.
So you'll have to go back and build some building blocks with your dog. Yes. But we definitely don't need to out-muscle a dog to train it.
Yeah, I think that is a great question and a great answer as well. All right, I'm going to read one more here.
Okay.
All right, I can train with good results indoors, but outside, my dog doesn't know I exist. So, you know what? I think I'm going to pick another one because that's pretty much the same as our sporting dog thing. Like that would be the same answer. There needs to be a transition from the white room into the real world.
Right. You need to train outdoors.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
and sometimes it is ugly when you first go outside, right? Sometimes it's like, oh my gosh, this doesn't feel good. It felt great inside. Right. The dog was, focused on me. The dog was easy to engage with, but now the distractions are bigger. So if you can bridge that gap somehow, that's great. Maybe that means working on the front porch for a while if you've got some space on the front porch, or if you're in an apartment, for example, maybe working in the hallway or the lobby, or, maybe even using a vehicle to transport a dog into a less exciting space. If you're in an apartment and you're in New York City, for example, and you go outside the apartment, there's no quiet space anywhere. So maybe you need to drive somewhere to find a sort of quieter in-between space. But really, I mean, don't give up when it's ugly initially, because chances are it's going to be ugly initially regardless, because now we're throwing this extra thing at our puppies or our dogs. But as long as you have put in the foundation work and you have a plan, right? So that's what's missing when there's not a training plan in place, is the what ifs, right? The if then else piece of the equation. If you haven't done training, and if you haven't started practicing skills, and you don't have a good idea of what to do in that scenario, it all just becomes ugly, right? The dog's so distracted, they're pulling, they're lunging at this, that, and the other thing, and we're just holding on to the end of the leash. But if I have my training plan in place, so, okay, I go outside with my dog and my dog is excited and distracted and goes to the end of the leash and starts pulling, and I have my sit placement, right? I can cut my leash, I can grip by the clip, I can say sit, I can guide up and place my dog, and then I can put slack in the leash. Even if my dog gets up and I have to repeat that motion, I'm still taking control of that situation, right? I'm not just letting this naughty behavior that I don't want continue to happen. So yeah, it might mean that I have to place my dog back in the sit 10 times, right? In that training session, I was only able to get, 30 seconds in total over the repetition of 10, where my dog held position on a loose lead, and where I was able to get in some rewards for him doing that. So at that point, that's session 1 under my belt, right? Now I come back for session number 2, and it might still be a little bit ugly, but maybe I get 45 seconds in total, and maybe my dog gets more rewards and I do less placements, and now he's starting to go, okay, I get it. It's valuable here too. And my training starts to override the distractions in the environment. So it's all a process. Like you can't expect to go out into this new scenario and have a dog go, oh yeah, I'm going to ignore all these exciting smells. I'm going to ignore all these things and pay attention to nothing but you, until you've done the training. So don't be afraid of that messy piece. Work through it. It's going to be ugly a little bit, but then it starts to get prettier. It starts to get easier.
It's like I know you are relearning how to draw and do art. I'm sure you've created some pretty ugly pieces now learning.
I have a good size sketchbook that's pretty filled up at this point. And I was showing Kip actually. I was like, okay, look at what I've been doing. And here's some of my pictures. And like the first couple, he was like, wow. These are really good. Like there was because the first couple were fairly easy. So there was a landscape scene that if you're following instructions on some of these things, it's like, oh, why did I have this be so complicated in my head before? I thought I needed to know how to like make everything look perfect right from the get-go. Well, no, first you create shapes, and then you start adding details. So initially it looks silly, and then it looks ugly. But then as you refine the details, it starts to get prettier and prettier.
That's dog training.
Absolutely.
You start with your shapes, you add your details. It looks horrible, but then it turns out great.
And then it turns out beautifully. So then as you're flipping through the book, there's an attempt to draw a dog head, and like I was working on the shapes and the proportions, and then I started adding the detail, but I actually messed up at the proportions piece. So like the nose was too big and the eyes were a little bit off in terms of being too big, and it just looks so silly. So like the first landscape looked great, and then there was a tree, and I really liked the tree too. So I was like, look at my tree. Like, it looks like a tree. It looks good. And we actually spent all this time looking at the faces in the tree. And then we turned the page again, and I was like, Kate, don't look at this one.
Right.
And I was explaining like how it got messed up and whatnot. But there's a lot of ugly pictures that I have in that sketchbook.
Think of that too when you see dog trainers. So say you're watching our YouTube videos and you see these beautifully trained dogs. We did go through ugly periods with them too. Like, like that. There's some real crazy stuff in the middle. So keep that in mind. Our dogs just don't go from little puppies to flawless. You know, there's dips and curves and all kinds of ugly things that happen along the way. And then we can present this beautiful picture.
Yes, absolutely. So if you're expecting it to look perfect right from the get-go, it's going to be horrendously disappointing for you.
Think of Shannon's art.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And you know what? I have no doubt that as I continue practicing drawing dog heads, it will get better. But right now, like, I need to work through the ugly first. And then eventually it's going to be lovely. I hope.
Yes, it will be. It will be, Shannon. You're very artistic. Yes, I know it will be.
It's just like a fun hobby that I'm getting into.
Yeah, it's going to be good.
I mean, really, it's nice because there's no pressure.
Right.
You know, if they are ugly, well, all right, I'll just turn that page, start on the next page here. But eventually, I think things will start looking
They
nice.
They will, yes.
We'll see. All right. Well, that was a fun episode.
Yes.
We have tons more questions in the bank, so we will come back and do another of these episodes, but it is time to say farewell. On that note, I'm Instructor Shannon.
Instructor Swanny.
Happy training.
Happy training.
The McCann Dogs Podcast is brought to you by McCann Professional Dog Trainers. We help dog owners to have a well-behaved, four-legged family member. Please give us a call at 905-659-1888 or visit us at mccanndogs.com. Happy training!